football Gameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Memory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and welcome to our 2013 College Football Preview Show. And today we're going to break down the new conference, the American Athletic Conference. So let's get this video kicked off by looking at the recruiting trail to see how well these teams recruited this past offseason.
The best recruiting class in the American Athletic Conference, and you see where their focus was. They want to get better on the defensive side of the football. They got to continue to get pressure, and they also have to stop the run better. But a key recruit, in my opinion, is James Quick, the wide receiver, 6'1", 180. Here's a guy that's one of the more explosive receivers in the country, and you add him to this Cardinal offense as your third option. It's just going to open up things even more so for the passing game, and we know Bridgewater will find a way to get him the football. So this was a huge pickup for that Cardinals football team. I think Savon Lowry of UCF has a great chance to play early as a freshman. Here's a guy that's 6'3", 225, tremendous speed coming off the edge, and also has the aggressiveness you want from a defensive player. Another guy that can step in right away and play early is JUCO transfer Jarrell Jordan, 6'3", 245. He's versatile enough to line up as an outside backer in certain situations, so I like what this guy brings to the table for the Bearcats. And right off the bat, you see the live on by John O'Corn, 6'4", 207, should do fine in that Houston Cougars offense. I actually like this guy's long-term potential. Should be one of the top players in this conference moving forward. Traylon Sheed, 6'2", 220, former Texas running back. He signed with the University of Texas, transferred down to a JUCO. Now he comes into SMU's program, and this guy should get the bulk of the carries and should be very productive. Another JUCO transfer coming into the Memphis program, Kawan Alfred, a guy that played defensive end at the JUCO level. He's going to be an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense, and he definitely can get to the quarterback. Running back Zaire Williams may see a lot of time in that Temple offense because this is a guy that's a very elusive runner, shows good burst, and one thing that's underrated about his game is his ability to pass protect. And when you look at Ruckers getting one of the top defensive backs in the country in Nadir Barnwell right there in Piscataway, so it's a local product. This is a guy that can play safety, he can play corner, he has ball skills, and is not afraid to come up in a run game and make a big hit on a runner or a receiver. Yukon has to get more explosive in the receiving department. That's why when you look at Noel Thomas and what he can bring to the table after the catch, you see right here just weaving his way through traffic. That right there can open up this Yukon offense, and they need this guy to step in right away and provide huge dividends. South Florida was able to land a local product in Derek Calloway out of Bradenton, Florida. 6'1", 300-pound defensive tackle, will probably see extensive time as a true freshman. Louisville Cardinals have the best quarterback core in this conference. You look at Teddy Bridgewater being a possible Heisman Trophy candidate, and two impressive freshmen, one incoming in Kyle Boland and one backing up Bridgewater in Will Gardner. The Knights have an impressive stable of backs led by Storm Johnson, who will likely go over 1,000 yards this year, and Cedric Thompson, who reminds some down there in Orlando of former Knight Kevin Smith. Devontae Parker and Damian Copeland forming an excellent 1-2 punch, and you can't forget about Mr. Third Down himself, Eli Rogers, and now you add in a tight end and Florida Gator transfer Gerald Christian and true freshman James Quick. You can see why expectations are high in Louisville. It's a tie for the best offensive line in the conference between Cincy and Ruckers. Both lines have multiple all-conference performers, and all guys, in my opinion, are definitely pro prospects, and both will lean on their offensive lines as they both break in new running backs. So it's a tie between the Cincinnati Bearcats and the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Even before Aaron Lynch, this was a very good defensive line for South Florida. Now you add him to the mix along with Ryan Giddens and Luke Sager on the inside, and the Bulls won't miss a beat up front. It's another tie here for the Cincinnati Bearcats. This time it's with the Louisville Cardinals for the best linebacking core, and the Bearcats get Florida State transfer Jeff Luck to play alongside Greg Blair, who's an outstanding player in his own right. And the Cardinals have middle linebacker Preston Brown along with James Burgess and Keith Brown, both of whom started as true freshmen. The Cardinals have the best secondary in the conference, a veteran group of guys led by two outstanding safeties in Hakeem Smith and Calvin Pryor, and despite the loss of cornerback Adrian Bushell, they're still solid on the corners with Terrell Floyd and Andrew Johnson. I think the Bearcats have the best special teams unit in the AAC. You look at kicker Tony Miliano, a guy that went 7 out of 11 from field goals between 40 and 49 yards. That's getting it done, and the return game is in good hands with Ralph David Abernathy averaging over 25 yards of return. Offensive MVP this year will be Brandon Coleman, in my opinion. This is a guy that's a terror in the red zone, big frame, and if he can get consistent quarterback play, he's going to put up some monster numbers this year for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Defensive MVP Aaron Lynch, the transfer from Notre Dame, should put up some big numbers this year as he's chomping at the bit to get out there back on the field. He did a great job as a freshman for Notre Dame, and there's no reason why he can't do the same for the South Florida Bulls. The Rookie of the Year, you look at running back Traylon Sheed for SMU. This is the guy that was a Texas recruit coming over to SMU where he's going to be the lead ball carrier, should produce over 1,000 yards for that offense. And I believe the best pro prospect in this conference is clearly Teddy Bridgewater of Louisville, a guy that possesses every attribute you want for a quarterback: the accuracy, the arm strength, the leadership, the poise, and the mobility. This is one of the best players in the country. I believe the SMU Mustangs have the toughest schedule in the American Athletic Conference. You look at that road schedule. You look at the first 5 games, matter of fact. Texas Tech, you can't sleep on. Montana State, very good FCS program. At A&M, at TCU. Then they open up conference play versus Ruckers. That's a very tough schedule for a team in SMU that's looking to get back to a bowl game. Let's start off with the Temple Owls. Reason for optimism: new head coach Matt Rule brings a new approach, in particular to the offense, a more well-balanced attack, and that only helps the offense, but it also aids in recruiting. Look out for true freshman running back Zaire Williams to push for playing time, and I love the linebackers Tyler Makovich and Nate Smith. Both guys are outstanding players. Now, the cause for concern: the defense gave up way too many yards and points. So the question instantly would be, how much did they really improve in the offseason? And offensively, there's a question at the quarterback spot. Junior Connor Riley is getting the nod to start, but there's too much instability for a first-year coach. But a solid recruiting class gives them hope for the future. Next up, we have the Houston Cougars, and the reason for optimism: if quarterback David Pilon can limit the interceptions, this offense still can be one of the better ones in the country. There's 9 starters returning on that offense, and defensively, they're moving to a 3-4, and that's a good thing because there's a ton of speed at linebacker. You look at guys like Derek Matthews, Trayvon Randall transferring from LSU, and also defensive end Eric Allen, who's a guy that's probably better suited to be a stand-up edge rusher in the 3-4, so he should have an outstanding 2013 season. The cause for concern: losing Charles Sims is a big blow because not only do you lose what he did as a running back, but also as a receiver out of the backfield. Also, Pilon still must find that consistency, and while there's speed on D, it has to start translating into stops. They were near the bottom in every statistical category defensively, so right now I don't see them being in the upper echelon of this conference because that defense right now still has a lot of questions going into the season. Next up, we have the SMU Mustangs, and the reason for optimism: defensively, there's a lot of size at every level, and they're very experienced. You look at their linebackers, Stephon Sanders and Randall Joyner, 2 very good football players. Now, offensively, there's some talent, and they can compete week in, week out. Look out for JUCO transfer Traylon Shedd to take the running back job and do a great job. Now, a cause for concern: both sides of the line of scrimmage struggled last season. They couldn't generate pressure on D, and the offense couldn't protect quarterback Garrett Gilbert in the pocket. Now, Gilbert and those wide receivers also have to play better. Way too many drops, way too many inconsistencies. So when you combine that with the first 5 games that we've talked about already, Texas Tech, Montana State, at Texas A&M, at TCU, this team will probably struggle out of the gate, and if they can turn it on, they can possibly push for back-to-back bowl bids. Coming in the 7th spot, I have the Yukon Huskies, and the reason for optimism: I'm still a big fan of their defense. Defensive end Angelo Pruitt and defensive tackle Shamara Stephen are 2 very good defensive linemen. You look at middle linebacker Yawin Smallwood, he should garner some All-American honors this season. And Florida transfer Graham Stewart should be a solid starter as well. They have a veteran secondary, so there's a lot to like about this defense for Yukon. The cause for concern: the health of running back Lyle McCombs leads me into my concerns for this offense. He's a very good player at 100%. I think he's going to do fine this year as he's healthy, but he's constantly running versus stacked fronts. That's why it's important that quarterback Chandler Whitmer and that passing attack, they have to improve by leaps and bounds this season. Also, defensively, while like Smallwood and Stewart, losing guys of the caliber of C.O. Moore and Trevardo Williams, that's a combined 19.5 sacks that's gone from this season. So while I still like the defense, I think that's what's going to hold these guys this year. The offense has to get it together in order for these guys to move up in the standings. Next up, we have the South Florida Bulls, and when you look at a reason for optimism, you have to like the hire of Willie Taggart as the head coach. That's an excellent hire for USF. He'll bring more of a traditional pro-style offense to Tampa. When we look at the defensive side of the football, that front 7 could ultimately lead this football team. You have Notre Dame transfer Aaron Lynch, Ryan Giddens are guys that could bring the heat off the edge, and linebacker D.D. Lattimore seems like he's been there forever, but he's been productive each and every year. Now, the cause for concern: they're going to have to find consistency with the passing game. It doesn't have to be explosive. It just can't be a detriment to team success. And we'll see what quarterback Bobby Evell will bring to the table, and they have to decide on a starter at running back. So right now, I still think this is a very good defensive team, and they'll figure things out offensively, so right now I have them settled in the middle of the conference. I have the Memphis Grizzlies finishing 5th in the American Athletic Conference. The reason for optimism, the Tigers finished last year with a 3-game winning streak, and second-year head coach Justin Fuente's system should yield positive results moving forward. They're big up front. They should be able to run the football with 2 talented backs in Brandon Hayes and Jai Steve. Defensively, they played a lot of sophomores last season, and they got better each and every week of the season, so now they're experienced. Defensive end Martin Affetti and linebackers Anthony Brown, Charles Harris, safety Lonnie Ballantyne all look like all-conference performers. Now, the cause for concern, will quarterback Jacob Karam build on an impressive junior season? He had 14 touchdowns and 3 picks, or will they look to redshirt freshman Paxton Lynch to be the guy? In the AAC, you have to be well-balanced, and they can't afford to have any questions throwing the football moving forward. But I do like the Tigers as my surprise team in this conference, and I think they get back to a bowl game this season. Next up are the Ruckers Scarlet Knights, and the reason for optimism, they're strong on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Defensive end Jamil Merrill is a solid all-around player that does a great job versus the run. And when you match new offensive coordinator Ron Prince with an athletic offensive line that has size, only good things can happen. The linebackers also show promise, and when you look at wide receiver Brandon Coleman, he's a legit weapon, especially in the red zone. The cause for concern, consistent quarterback play from Gary Nova. If he can't be consistent throughout the course of the season, this offense could struggle. And while the linebackers have promise, they have to replace 2 studs back there in Berharnis and Kasim Green. The secondary is also inexperienced, losing some top guys as well. And in the backfield, you have to look at Tavon Huggins, who came in with a lot of expectation. Can he live up to the billing and be the guy this season for that running game? If so, then this offense can definitely get back to what they were in the beginning of last season and possibly challenge for the conference crown. Coming in third, we have the UCF Knights, and the reason for optimism, the offensive potential here is exciting with quarterback Blake Bortles and a good core wide receivers and Storm Johnson in the backfield, and they have a very solid offensive line. On the defensive side of the football, I'm a big fan of their interior defensive line with the D tackles E.J. Dunston and Demetrius Anderson, so there's no question whether or not they'll be able to stop the run. You also look at linebacker Terrence Plummer and strong safety Clayton Geathers. Now, the cause for concern, they lost talent of the likes of Camille Ishmael, A.J. Bowie, and Troy Davis. That does knock you back a bit because those guys were playmakers. The pass defense will get tested very early with games versus Penn State, South Carolina, and Louisville, and it is not a huge concern, but it's slight questions moving forward. But I still think this is one of the top teams in the conference and could give guys fits each and every week. Next up, we have the Cincinnati Bearcats, and a reason for optimism, Tommy Tuberville can flat out coach. So that was a great hire by the Bearcats. There's good pieces in place on offense with all 5 starters returning along that offensive line. And quarterback Brandon Kay played some very good ball last season. Despite the losses up front, the front 7 will be fine on the defensive side of football, especially the linebacking core with Jeff Luck, Greg Blair, who was all Big East last season. Now, the cause for concern, can the receiving core step up to the plate and provide that consistency game to game? And who's going to be the guy to replace George Wynn? The pass defense also is a question, giving up 250 yards a game. And this is a pretty challenging road schedule moving forward at Illinois, at South Florida, at Ruckers. Can they overcome that? If they can, they may challenge Louisville for the top spot. And at the number 1 spot, we have the Louisville Cardinals. The reason for optimism, they have the best quarterback in college football in Teddy Bridgewater with a big-time receiving core led by Devontae Parker. They're young, talented, and experienced. Remember, a lot of these guys started together as freshmen. Now they're juniors. That's a dangerous combination. And the back 7 on defense is very promising with Hakeem Smith, the strong safety, and Kelvin Pryor, the free safety. And when you look at the linebackers, linebacker Preston Brown leads the way, and he's going to be a star. And when you look at their schedule, it sets up pretty nice for these guys, so they could probably get on a run and push for an undefeated season. Now, the cause for concern, quiet is kept. Teams were able to run the football on Louisville last season, so they're going to have to improve their run defense, and they're going to have to learn to put teams away. They were in a lot of shootouts, a lot of close games, and they could have lost those games last season, but that shows the mark of a young team that learned how to win early. So this year, there should be no problem with these guys moving forward, but those are some concerns I have about this Cardinal football team, but this still will be a special 2013 campaign for Louisville.